Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sunandini and I'm the host for this session. In this webinar, we have with us Mr. Prathmesh Joshi, an all-rounder who did his MBA in Finance and Marketing from IIM-Ranchi and BTech from NIT Nagpur. He's a self-made strategy professional. As this webinar is expanding and the guests and viewers are also expanding their knowledge and questioning us regarding career switches and is doing an MBA even the answer for everything? So today we are going to go beyond MBA and talk about a person known to go for everything, a basketball player, dancer, orator, and though he chose a certain specialization in MBA, but he ended up doing something which is quite different, and he did something that is not defined by his own resume, basically. So what are we waiting for? But before we start this webinar, I'm just going to say, if you guys have any questions during the webinar, then just write it on the live chat and I'll take it up either in between the session or by the end of the session. So really great having you here and learn a lot from your experiences, Prathmesh.
Thanks, Anandani, for an amazing description. I hope I do justice to everything that you mentioned right now. But yeah, in the essence of time, let's start. Yeah.
Great. So as usual, before going into in-depth about whatever you're doing right now, I want to know or paint a picture to us about your 12th grade. What were you, how were you like, and some of your beliefs, goals about life?
Got it. So, Sanandini, if I were to put my schooling, I would categorize it into probably three stages. Schooling or rather education, I would say one was between prior to my class 7, after that 7 to 12th, and then from 12th onwards. So I'm guessing before, when I was in that first phase of mine, I was pretty much just like any other kid, very laid back, was obsessed with Pokemon, Tazos, pretty much spent all my hard-earned money from all the relatives on festivities to buy all of those things. But yeah, I think the main transition happened, the first course of transition happened from when I moved from class 7 to 8. And I realized, especially from a fitness level, that I have to work on myself. And this is something which has to be taken care of, because I was seeing a lot of examples in my surroundings who were having a lot of issues, physical ailments. And that was the first trigger to start working on yourself. And since then, sports and physical activities have been a part and parcel of all of my endeavors, and they have actually, in some form or shape, also molded my professional approach as well. So that was the phase in from, I would say, class 8 to 12th, wherein I was working a lot on myself. Again, if I were to put it into two categories, it would be from an academic standpoint and an extracurricular standpoint, wherein I focused a lot more on extracurriculars than academics, because thanks to my parents, they were always very supportive. They just had one condition: you just need to land in the top 2 of your class, and then you're free to do anything by yourself. So I think that was super helpful. Academics were always taken care of. But yeah, I focused a lot on basketball. I played nationals basketball. I focused a lot on swimming, cricket, pretty much all of the sports. So 8th till 11th was the time when I pursued sports with a professional goal in mind. And in 11th, when I actually played nationals, I realized that this is going nowhere. And I probably will not make it. The realities of life probably hit me hard then. And that's when, after my 11th, when I started my 12th class, and that was the time when I realized that I need to make something out of myself from an academic standpoint. And that's when I started preparing for JEE and Triple E. And yeah, that's the picture from class 8th to 12th. And post that, I got into my BTech, and that was a whole different ball game altogether. So yeah, that's a brief summary of my school, college life. Yeah.
So you were always an all-rounder, and then you chose, was engineering just because everybody was becoming an engineer or the future looked very bright, that option came in your life or your career?
Got it. So again, Sanandani, as I mentioned before, that I wasn't hell bent on pursuing an academics aligned career, right? But when I was faced with the truths of life, this was the time that okay, the best option to go for someone like me who is not very sure what he wants to do as a professional career is engineering, and there are actually two reasons for it. One is in India, engineering opens up a lot of gates for you. You can pursue finance, you can do an MBA, you can go for entrepreneurship, pretty much all of those things. If you see 75% of the founders have an engineering degree, the other 24% have some other degrees, and those the 1% is the dropout cohort, right, which is the most glamored phase, if I would say. But yeah, that is just 1%. So I think engineering was that's the first part, and second is obviously it is a very generic view your after your 12th, right? So you get to meet a lot of different people from different geographies, different cultures. So all in all, engineering made a lot of sense for me, not because of a focused interest, but because it was more of a safety net for me.
Got it. And right after bachelor's, you actually pursued something in consulting. So
I
I want to know, let's say you're in college, you're thinking what to do ahead. And what was your major in engineering?
got it. So in engineering, I was pursuing materials engineering.
Mhm.
Okay. And again, I have actually pivoted a lot in all of my endeavors, and I have no regrets about that. I love that I am passionate about a lot of different things because it has helped me open a lot of gateways. But yeah, I guess in engineering, if I were to say, I really liked my branch and I wanted to go for a direct PhD right after bachelor's. And I had two offers with full scholarship from HKUST as well as CMU. And I visited both of these universities. They invited me for CMU was virtual, HKUST was in person. I went there for 15 days, interacted with my to be mentor. And what I realized was I had plans of getting into the industry after 4 years of PhD. But the usual, or rather the customary approach towards a PhD is you do your PhD, you do 2 years of doctorate, and then probably end up in academics as a career, which is something which I'd never wanted to. So if you see, there was a drastic shift in, or rather a pivot from my aspirations of going for a direct PhD in my core branch to consulting. Now, how did I land up at Fractal as a consultant was I had it as the backup. The company visited on our campus, and I kept it as a backup because this is something which I again want to highlight. You should always have a backup, no matter what people say that there shouldn't be a plan B because if you have a plan B, you do not give your 100% in plan A. But in reality, I think you should always have a plan B, not to the very realist of extents, but yeah, it should always be there. But yeah, jumping back to uh, the discussion that we were having, and that's why the next best option was consulting, because again, if you see, consulting also opens a lot of doors for you. It's more of a generalist role, and it actually trying to dabble into pretty much a lot of things. So that's why I opted for consulting.
Got it. So, as you said, consulting was a generalist role. I want to understand why did they choose someone from an engineering background? Is it a normal thing, first of all?
Yes. So, Sanandani, if you see for any of the consulting firms, you get hired as a junior consultant or a junior analyst, right? And what they need for such a role is how good are you at thinking. You don't need to have all the domain expertise since you're a fresher. All they want to check is how good are you in terms of thinking. Will you be able to grasp things fast, and will you be in the long term, will you be able to cope up with the company's culture and pace? So that is something which all of these companies who visit IITs, NITs, and other engineering colleges, this is what they look for, because essentially all of them are hiring freshers, right? None of the candidates have a deep domain expertise. So the next best thing to look for is their ability to cope up with the company's culture. And if you see, I think the next question was, is it fairly easy for engineers to get into such roles rather than CAs and other degrees? I would say, again, I think there is a very big bias because most of the people that you come across here would be engineers, right? So obviously, when this domain, or rather, I would say the sample space is so large, it's bound to put in a bias that only engineers can crack such roles. But I have seen a lot of really good folks from St. Stephen's, from SRCC. These are all commerce background people who have successfully cracked consulting roles. So I don't think that it's just an engineering specific career choice.
Got it. Now, once let's say you join the company, so this is your first job, right? First official job.
Yes, yeah.
So I want to know maybe the first day or the first month, how was the shift in your mindset when you joined, and what was your role? That what was your first role basically in this company?
Got it. So I was hired as a consultant. If I were to put it broadly, it would be sort of a junior associate role, right? It's just because the terminologies are different for different companies. But yeah, nevertheless, I'll address the second part of your question, wherein what I did uh, in my role as a consultant. I was working for an FMCG giant, and my client was based out of the US. I closely worked with her on enhancing their brand share and ROI for different promotions that they did across different territories in the US at different parts of the year. So all in all, it was just about getting them firstly an enhanced market share in the industry, and second was in doubling on their ROI for all the money that they have invested. So that was the role. Coming back to the first part where you mentioned how was the first day, first month was like, it was definitely a very new feeling, because suddenly from something very unstructured in the college, you come to an MNC of sorts, wherein everything is in place. You have to interact with different people, a lot of stakeholders at stake, and plus you get lured in by all the fancy stuff in the canteen, in the sports arena. So all in all, it was a very overwhelming but amazing experience. I think it took me almost 2 weeks to just go across the office and get my hands on pretty much all of the plays that they had.
Got it. And later on, I think you did MBA. So here is the catch. I want to understand. People do MBA, then they get into consulting. But you were one of the lucky ones who understood that they want to get, or maybe by chance or as a backup, you got into consulting. And then you thought, no, let's do an MBA, and then you want to do something. So what was the mindset there? What was the switch of interests?
Got it. So Sanandani, I want to clear one thing before this, that when you enter as a junior consultant or a junior associate after bachelor's in consulting, your role mostly is probably in the mid office or the back end, where you are generally not very much interacting with the client directly. It totally depends on the discretion of your manager, who apparently mine was really helpful. My manager really helped me boost up my skill set by giving me a lot of client face time. But generally that is something which takes a backseat when you join consulting right after your bachelor's. And the reason after joining uh, the reason after joining after doing your MBA and then joining consulting is twofold. One is, I'll answer this in two ways. One is my perspective, and the second is the general industry perspective. After MBA, when you join consulting, you get on a partners track. So right now, you from day zero, you start getting client face time. You get a lot of ownership in terms of what you have to do, and at the same time, since you're responsible for a lot of these results to be driven, it's an up or out culture. Either you grow up or you have to leave the firm, right? That's one. And second, from my perspective, why I went for an MBA is because again, I guess I would say there would be two prominent reasons. One was I had a choice to get into the hardcore tech side, analytics side, and I realized very soon that I'm not very good with coding and pretty much all of the fancy stuff. And that's why I've huge respect for all the coders and R&D guys. But yeah, that was one. And at the same time, I realized that I really liked interacting with all the clients, developing relationships, working on the business side of things, getting things done more from an executionary and strategy standpoint. So that was one of the reasons. And the second reason was because again, MBA opens a lot of doors for you.
Right. And how did you end up in IIM-Ranchi?
That's a very unique story. But yeah, let me just I'll try to cover it up succinctly, and I think it's a good depiction of me being a bit more of a risk taker than a risk averse. And after that, I started having, or rather, hedging more of my risks. So I had calls after my CAT. I had calls from all the new IIMs, SPJIMR, MDI, and a late call from IIM Indore. Now, my very first call was SPJIMR, and it went really well. And I was waitlisted at one for finance, and finance was my priority at that point in time. And after that, I was so sure that from the past historic trends that I had seen, that I'll definitely convert this. I ended up missing on my interviews from MDI and IIM Indore. I didn't even check the application. All I did was, just as a backup, I went for the cap rounds, wherein you get interviewed for all the new IIMs. And I think that's where again there was the second time that realities hit me hard, that my one I was still at the waiting list number one when the admissions closed for SPJ, and then the next best option that I had was IIM-Ranchi. Until that time, I had actually resigned my job as well. So I think I had a choice. I had a discussion with my then manager, and he was ready to take me in the current role. But I think I had made up my mind that I want to go for an MBA. So better now than later. So yeah, that's how I ended up in IIM-Ranchi. Not the most wisest of decisions at that point in time, but definitely no regrets because of the reasons, or probably because of the stage that I am at right now.
Got it. And why did you opt for a dual degree in finance and marketing?
Got it. So there's no such thing as a dual degree in MBA, Sanandini. So what you have to do is you have to choose your majors.
Right.
And most people, what they do is they major in one, and then they can do a minor in the other, or you can have two majors, and you can also have two majors and one minor, but your schedule gets super packed. The reason why I took two majors was because I wanted to cover. If I'm covering anything, I have this approach that I want to do it end to end. I cannot do a minors in anything, or I cannot, I don't want to do anything haphazardly. That's why I wanted to do two majors. That's one. And secondly, why finance and marketing is, I think finance and marketing pretty much forms the backbone of every business in theory, and in practice everything goes on operations. Now operations is something that you can always learn in a job, because every company has a different ops profile, way of doing their things. So ops is essentially execution, and execution is better learned when you actually practice it in a company, right? So that was one of the reasons why I did not go for operations. And finance and marketing is something which you need to be aware of in theory before starting practice. So I think it was a very obvious choice. And if you will come across any of the other good MBA candidates, they would have definitely done some or the other majors in both finance and marketing. They would have picked their, or chosen their subject cohorts in this way, that they try to cover the main aspects of finance and marketing.
So throughout, you have always been like jack of all, or all rounder, as you say. Here also, your decisions are somewhat like that. So I want to know, when you joined your MBA, you are doing your MBA. Did you have any plan further that okay, I want to work for this company or this industry or this domain?
Got it. So, so Nandini, I think I believe that I have a very my personality aligns very much with a thoroughbred generalist of sorts, right? I'm still, yes, to get to that stage where where I have decided that I want to go deep into something, right? And I think from a generalist sense, this is something which actually mattered to me a lot when I moved in. Oh, sorry. When I opted for finance and marketing, and I think when I joined MBA, though I had no clue about McKinsey, BCG, Bain, how do they hire, and probably the second tier consulting firms as well. You have the likes of Big Four, probably Accenture Strategy. So I went in an MBA with no end goal in mind again, and I think that's the rush which I did before selecting IIM-Ranchi. But any which ways, I think once I landed up at IIM-Ranchi, the best option that I had was from the cohort of companies that came to the campus was on the lines of investment banking, and the best option was JP Morgan at that point in time. So I still have that snapshot wherein on day one I reached out to a senior of mine who got placed at JP Morgan saying that I want to crack JP Morgan in my second year, and I'll do that. So you please do help me in doing that. And when I actually cracked JP Morgan, he reached out to me saying, "Hey, congratulations." So that was like, I think one of the really good decisions which I made very early in my MBA, that this is something which I want to go ahead with. And that was the underlying reason why I took finance as my majors. Hello. Yeah.
Got it. And hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
I understood why you chose JP Morgan. Now I want to understand why JP Morgan chose you. So how did you got the chance to join this company?
Got it. So again, I think it was one of the first companies to visit the campus. They had a shortlisting criteria of majoring in finance. So that was one. Secondly, I think there were three rounds. One was a case study round where they wanted to evaluate if this person has the right mindset, has the thinking capability. Because now, and also the third thing was a structured approach. So this was the first round. The difference between the interviews right after BTech and right after MBA is there's a lot of structure that comes to mind and comes on the table to be evaluated for each of these candidates. So that was the first case study round. I think I fared well in that one, and that's what led to the second round, which was more on the tech aspects. Now they have actually seen that you are smart enough to join the company. You have a good structured approach. What they want to evaluate, secondly, is your technical knowledge. As I mentioned before, that you need to have some theoretical knowledge in finance. So the second round was again based on technical aspects, working capital. They'll ask me a lot of things, and again, I think I fared decent in those rounds, which led to the last round, which was the HR round. Uh, Now uh, the general, or rather, I would say the general opinion or view is once you reach the HR round, you have more or less cracked the company. But that was not the case in many of my friends' interviews. So the HR round at big MNCs, they don't just evaluate you, but they also evaluate your family background as well. Do you have the right mindset? Do you have the right backing to actually work in a company like ours? And lastly, from a self culture perspective, like culture fit perspective, I would say they'll also look at the location constraints, or if you have any other, what is your mindset? Are you willing to stick with the company for a long time or not? So all of these aspects are gauged in the HR. So if I were to summarize, the first one was more on your thinking and structuring capabilities. Second was on your technical aspects, and third is more like a culture fit.
Got it.
That's how I ended up at JPM.
Got it. So, let me summarize something. So, you did your engineering, then
Mhm.
you did consulting for a while, and then you changed your career from consulting to finance by through an MBA that you did in between. And then
Mhm.
after 1 year of this, you again changed your career path. And I want to understand the reality. I'm not saying that JP Morgan is bad in some way. I'm just saying the reality of JP Morgan, which was not fit with whatever you were looking for at that point of time. So, what is the story behind this?
Got it. So, Sanandini, again, I can sense two sides of, or rather, two questions here. So, I'll address the first one when you mentioned that I frequently kept pivoting from the
Yeah.
streams that I was pursuing, right? And the second question which you asked is why didn't you stick with JP Morgan and then switched? So, the first one, let me answer the first one by saying if you see consulting and strategy roles, these are a broad encompassing view of pretty much all of the major streams, right? And the way to validate this is you see investment bankers becoming great consultants, becoming CHROs, CXOs, CSOs. Okay. So that is the easiest way forward. So when you say, right, that if I'm jumping streams, essentially I am just trying to broaden my view while having the same knowledge which I got from the previous company and put that knowledge and expertise, or rather not expertise but specialization, uh, to good use in the next endeavor that I pursue. So that is one thing. All of these are interconnected. So when I talk about strategy, you have finance strategy, you have operation strategy, you have marketing strategy, you have GTM, you have a lot of things. So all in all, strategy and consulting roles are like a very horizontal role. So definitely it's not a very pivotal switch. And the second question was around why not JPM. So again, I think I am not made for an MNC top style of a culture. At least at that point in time, I wanted what I wanted at that point, and which I also suggest a lot of my juniors who reach out to me, that you should get your hands on at the ground level, pretty much in a startup, hustle a bit and put in the hours, get a lot of work from an operations perspective. And I think I wasn't getting that at an MNC big shot like a JPM, right? Because the work became a bit redundant, financial modeling and all of those things. And that was one. And secondly, I wanted something very fast paced. So that's why that was the core reason to switch from JPM. And I'm actually very grateful that I realized this pretty early in my career. And thanks to a lot of people at JPM and also a couple of my mentors from IIM Ranchi as well, uh, who are at really good positions. And they actually helped me understand the whole, or rather, introspect and understand what I want for myself. So yeah, that's how I went on from JP Morgan to a startup called CRED.
Got it. Before we enter the cred zone, I want to come back a bit and understand this part. So I realized like maybe you were a confused person or you wanted many things and you wanted to understand and you finally found your one thing which is cred and strategy that is good for you at that point of time. But if I'm looking at your CV from a LinkedIn perspective, so now everybody says that LinkedIn is your resume and is your CV. So if I look at your profile, there are so many variations. So as an HR or as a company person who is looking into your CV, my thought process is maybe he's a confused kid or maybe he's a generalist. So I want to like understand the difference between this. So confusion versus generalist. I don't think generalists are confused because I don't find that. But what is your perspective on this?
Got it. Very interesting question, Sanandini. Let me rephrase it this way, or rather, put a new perspective here. Each person at any point in time is can be categorized into probably three buckets. One is he or she knows what they want to do in life or what they want to pursue, right? Second is something. Second is a category where they know that they don't know what they want to pursue. Right? They know that they don't know what they want to pursue, right? They're pretty much aware of the realities. And the third ones are the ones who are indecisive or are here or are going by hearsays, right? What I'm concerned about is the third category. You should not lie into the third category. Where I would put myself when I was back then was in the second category. That I don't know what I want to do expertise in, right? So what's the best option? Take a generalist approach, right? What's the best way to do that is take all the opportunities that come your way, right? And that's what justifies all of those things which I have done on LinkedIn, right? And if you actually go through my profile, you'll see I've dabbled in finance a lot. I would say if I were to go for uh, a specialization, it would be on the I would say on the corp dev or VC side of things because of my background in finance. I've also worked on marketing. Right now, I am working on a lot of things from a marketing and partnership standpoint. So yeah, I think that explains that I always had a generalist mindset, and I still do. I love working on in a horizontal role, working with a lot of stakeholders from R&D, finance, marketing, operations, analytics. So, and I truly love that, and that's why I am in a strategy role. Product people are some of the smartest folks that I've come across. So yeah, the main advantage of being a generalist is you get to work with a lot of these people, and that too from a very high level because you're working in the CEO's office. So you have a very broad view as to what's going on in the company, right? And that view helps you decide whether you want to go into and probably go for an expertise in any of those domains, right? I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So now I want to understand, was strategy an easy thing to crack, seeing your background and whatever choices you made in your career in the past?
Got it. Strategy was definitely not an easy career path to crack. Reason being, uh, again, the realities of life. I am from a tier two IIM, I would say, and again, so it's there are two ways to go about cracking strategy. One is going from a management consulting firm to the likes of MBB, right? And then joining a strategy firm, joining a strategy role in an MNC or in a startup, right? That's one way. The second way, or the unconventional way, is coming up with really good relationships from which are born out of intellect and not of personal interactions. Born out of intellect, essentially, what you do is you convince some of the big dignitaries or big guns at startups that, boss, I am cut out for a strategy role. Why don't you give me a shot, right? And I think that is the approach which I took to crack strategy, because I applied to a lot of I did file a lot of applications at MBB. I had calls from Accenture, but I didn't want to join. My sole focus was nahi yaar, MBB jana hai. And I think that was the typical mindset at that point in time, because I wanted to work with the sharpest of minds. And what is said is that MBB hires the best of the lot. So that was the reason. And unfortunately, I couldn't crack that because whenever I used to apply for these applications, the one criteria was that you have to be from ABCLI, LK. I don't even see I at that point in time. I didn't see. So yeah, I think the next best route was to get into a strat role at a startup, and not just any startup. You have to have it should have a good backing from the market. And obviously, when you come from a pedigree like mine, you have to prove that you are good at it. So there were some 6 7 rounds of interviews which I had to give before getting into this role, and all of those were 1 hour plus interviews. So pretty
How
interesting
long was this for?
journey. Sorry.
How long was this interview round went for?
Oh, okay. So that's again the best part about interviewing for a startup is if they are eager to hire, they'll conduct it back to back. So I would say the whole process was wrapped into max to max 2 weeks, or rather, I should put it in 10 days. And if you can imagine the interview fatigue that I would have creeped in at that point in time, but that's part and parcel of the role that you get into. So yeah, I think that is something which I did.
So, like, just in a nutshell, what does a person in a strategy role do, and what was CRED looking for exactly?
Mm. I wouldn't answer the second one. Let me try to answer holistically in the very first one. So, let me just define strategy. The what, why, and hows of any goal that a company wants, it is decided by the strategy team in one line, I would say. Let's say, if I were to give an example, let's say tomorrow Swiggy comes up and says that we need to increase our revenue by 10%, or let's say some one of the line of businesses, let's say Instamart, they want Instamart's revenues to go by go have a higher revenue share by 10% for their total ARR. That's the what they want to do, right? Does this solve? No. This is the problem statement at the very periphery. What is the root analysis? What is the one needle mover which will help, one or a couple of needle movers which will help the company attain? That is the what. That is answered by someone in the strategy team. Now, why? The second is, okay, fine, we solved for the problem, but why are we solving for this? Is there any other way around? If there's not, is there is this something which will definitely aid in the holistic business? What is the narrow view? What is the zoomed out view? This is the why side of the story, right? And once we are clear on that, then comes the how. And that's where you design the complete planning on how will you achieve. You do a timeline roadmap analysis, you form a charter of sorts, and then you trigger the whole motion. That is the strategy side of the story. And no role that I've come across in strategy comes without any execution or an operation ask. So strategy क्या है यार, तुम paper पे तो बना दोगे, but what is necessary is it should get implemented and executed. अगर वो नहीं हो रहा है, then there's no point in making strategy, right? So every role essentially that entails strategy also has an adjacent operations part as well, and you have to be good at execution. A lot of the strategy roles are initially filled in by people from management consulting. Why? Because management consulting folks are really good at structuring, problem solving. So they are really good at the strategy side of the story. But from an executional standpoint, that's where your startup experience helps you and probably rise up the ladder as well.
Okay, one question. So let's say there's an issue or a problem. You can pick up anything. Maybe the sales in Delhi is not increasing somehow. Something is not. Maybe credit is not selling enough credit cards to people in Bangalore. Let's say that's a question. Maybe I don't know. Just you make a problem statement, and I want to understand if this problem is given to a consultant who is a third party versus a strategy person who is inside the company. So how are they going to perform it or answer it in different ways?
Got it. So a lot of these strategy roles also entail leveraging external sources like MBBs to do this research for them, right? Let's say tomorrow I start a company, a SaaS company, and I want to see, can I actually grow my revenue by partnerships, right? I want to understand this whole thing. My North Star, if I were to say, is I want to land X number of partnerships to drive Y $1 million in my revenue, right? This is the problem statement which I can do an analysis by myself, which is an in-house thing, and I can give the same problem statement to a consulting firm, to the likes of MBB, right? What they do is they go for an outside-in approach. They have the market data. They have worked with a lot of clients in the similar domain. They have solved a lot of these problems in the past, right? So they look at it from an outside-in perspective, and pretty much gather all of their collateral, the insights from them, come up with a structured plan approach, and then they pitch it to you, right? At the same point in time, what I do and what I also recommend all the strategy guys, if they are watching this, do a self-analysis from an inside-out perspective, just to validate if these guys who have given you the pitch, if it actually matches with what you have found out. Because in my experience, it has never aligned more than 50 to 60%, which is a terrible thing, right? Because you give consulting firms crores of rupees a month, okay? And this is something which you really expect, right? But yeah, both of these view actually help in drafting the overall strategy, right? You get an outside in view from the likes of McKinsey, BCG, Bain, and you develop an inside out view from your company, from your own secondary research, from your uh, conversations with your network, with your peers, right? And strategy is essentially picking up things from all of these resources that you have, right? And trying to get 1 plus 1 is 3, or rather 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. If I were to put it right, that is something uh, which answers the first part of the story, as in what does a strategy role entails.
Got it. So, like, almost strategy is broader than consultancy also in a company.
Yeah, 100%. So consulting is, again, what is, when I say I'm consulting Sunandini, right? Whatever your problems are, you'll give it to me. I'll give you some feedback, right? These problems will be changing over time, right? And I won't just be consulting Sunandini. I'll be consulting someone else, Raj, Ram,
Right.
a lot of people, right? When I am in a strategy role and I'm working for Sunandini, I'll be only working for, let's say, inside IIM. My first problem statement would be to grow the GTM. Again, from a very business specific way, right?
Right.
The end goal is to grow inside IIM right now. And at consulting, my goal can change from formalizing a strategy for CRED, for, let's say, Magic Pin, for some other Swiggy, Zomato, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of I think variability in consulting, which is why a lot of people opt for consulting, because again, it is sort of a generalist role at the very beginning.
Yes.
It gives them a very wide view in terms of what do they want to pursue, what is something that they don't like, and then take a call.
Got it. So the last question from my side is, since you have done so many things, do you think it's harmful to try too many things in your career?
Okay. I think, again, let me just rephrase it in a much better way so that people can relate to it. I would say the first 4 or 5 years of your career versus the next, right? If I were to put it this way, first 4 or 5 years, or rather 4 years, if you are in that second category where you don't know what you want to do and you're very much aware of it and you're ready to try things, go for an all encompassing generalist role in the first 4 or 5 years, right? Try a lot of things. Uh, I've dabbled into core IAB, AWM, asset wealth management. Then I dabbled into fintech. Right now, I'm going to pursue uh, in SaaS, something in SaaS. So again, but at that point in time, after 4 years, after 5 years, I think you should have a clear view in terms of, do you want to go for a thoroughbred generalist, or do you want to become an expert? Both of these careers are rewarding, but you have to be very sure after 4 or 5 years. If you're not, then probably there is something to be worked upon.
Got it. So here I'm going to end my questions and give this opportunity to our viewers to ask questions. So whoever wants to ask, just ask away. And we have a couple of questions right now. So Saurav is asking, what are the drawbacks you see in a corporate jobs after MBA if someone has spent 4 years in UPSC preparation and has a gap year? Any advice for such CAT aspirants?
Got it. Saurabh, to be honest, I can personally relate to this question, and I'll tell you why. I have a colleague of mine who pursued UPSC for 2 years, and after that, he gave CAT and he landed up at IIM Ahmedabad, and right now he's working with me. So that, I think, that is one of the biggest advantages of working with one of the sharpest minds in the country, is because you grow a lot and you get to hear a lot of these stories. And I'll tell you from the experiences that I've heard from him. If you are pursuing UPSC, or if you have done that for the past 3 years, I'm pretty sure that firstly you'll be very good at grasping things. Secondly, you have developed that generalist frame of mind, and thirdly is you'll already be good at the uh, quant part of the cat cat exam, as well as the English side of the story, right? So all you need to work for is probably DILR. That takes care of the cat, the exam side of it. jumping to the interviews, let's say you score 100 percentile, uh, from an interview standpoint, I would say you you should just be honest and tell your story, because generally a lot of people have a lot of respect for UPSC pursuance. If you're really good at what you did, and if you just missed it by a whisker, and you actually, you should put it this way that I did give it some time. I analyzed my strengths, I analyzed my weaknesses. I had this time frame that I would give it 3 shots, 4 shots, and now that it hasn't worked, I'm ready to move on. And the next best side that I think to go for is consulting. Sorry, is MBA. And I think this will be just enough to convince them that this person has a very clear mindset, a very clear approach, and probably he'll do good in the MBA. And this would be followed by a lot of technical questions from your UPSC preparation.
Got it. So now we have one more person asking, you are from NIT Nagpur. How do you see the changes in your perception from college time to now about personal financing? And a added question, how one should plan their finance from early age?
How do you see your changes in your perception from college time to know about personal finance?
Yeah.
Interesting question. And to be honest, I think you should always think about it, but you should actively start consulting your friends and peers while doing a secondary scan like Google and everything. Once you start earning, right, or once you have some significant amount of money to invest. Right now I've seen a lot of people getting into this rush कि यार I want to invest, personal finance आना चाहिए, काफी सारी चीजें आनी चाहिए. But if you don't have the capital to invest in, it's good from a general knowledge approach, but I don't want you to dig deep into your pockets and take out your survival money and put it into something on an investment sort of uh, plan, right? So my take would be, from a personal finance view, definitely get to learn from a purely educational standpoint. And once you actually have that near zone, or once you are near that zone of making money, either from job or from your entrepreneurship, then start diving into each of these personal finance investment instruments, right? And that would be my suggestion.
Got it. Pranita is asking, in your opinion plus experience, how will you explain the difference between business consulting and management consulting?
Interesting question, actually. So, if you see, again, business consulting, rather, let me speak about management consulting, right? It's when you are a management consulting firm, businesses reach out to you, right? And they have a specific problem statement which you get to work on, right? To put it very simply. Firms, businesses, orgs, they'll come to you with one problem statement, you'll solve for it. That is management consulting, right? When you go for business consulting, the whole business depends on you. Let's say tomorrow you get hired for, let's say, a consulting role at Swiggy, right? All the problems at a strategy level for Swiggy will be your problems. You have to handle pretty much all of these things. You can collate it into one, or you can bifurcate into different cohorts. But all in all, you're looking at one specific business, right? Whereas for management consulting, you can always dabble into multiple projects. Right? That's the easiest way possible. A lot of people actually use it interoperably: business consulting, management consulting, strategy consulting. And to be honest, there is a very thin line between all of these. But yeah, I think what I said, hopefully that explains a lot.
Got it. So the next question is by Divyan. She's asking, did an early career in finance help you in strategy later in your life, in your career? Sorry.
Again, I guess Divyansh, two ways to answer this. One is from an acumen standpoint, from the knowledge standpoint. A bit, yes. I wouldn't attribute a lot of my pursuing towards strategy to go into the knowledge that I gained from finance. But yeah, it did help to a certain extent. The second part, which actually helped me, was learning with the best of peers. So the reason why I always look for a good for a very good company is because of the peers. Peers matter a lot to me. You have, like, if you are working with the sharpest of the lot, you are tend to grow, and I think that is what helped me when I was at JPM. I was working with some of the brilliant minds from IITs, ABCs. So yeah, it actually helped me up my game and probably get into strategy. And again, at the reason why I love working in horizontal strategy roles is you get to work from one of the brightest minds in the country. And again, please do not confuse when I say that one of the brightest minds in the countries are from IITs and ABCs. Most of them would be from these, but there are always exceptions and heavy amount of exceptions when I say when you can see people from tier 3, tier 4 colleges as well performing up to the mark, if not even beyond what the likes of us are doing.
Got it. Mehul is asking, how is not having a finance background in undergrad impact your selection chances in big finance firms? What did you do to bridge the gap apart from majoring in finance in MBA?
Uh, yeah, to be honest, there are two questions, right? The first one, definitely the commerce grads and the CAs have an edge over you. But this is at the very beginning of your MBA, right? You still have 1.5 years before that company comes in.
Hmm.
Take finance as majors and give it your all, and you'll land up with the interview. And after that, it's more about the three things which I mentioned: a good mindset with a problem solving structured attitude. Second is your technical aspects, and third is your culture fit.
Got it. And the last question of today is by Raghunandan. He's saying, is it better to get into consulting right after BTech or after half years of WorkX and MBA if one is looking for a long-term career in consulting?
Hmm. I guess he says 1 or 2 years of experience in consult and MBA. Okay. So, Raghu, I would say, I think the first thing that you should think about is, why do you want to go into consulting? Is it because of the money? Is it because of purely out of interest? Both reasons are 100% fine. I've seen a lot of people saying that you shouldn't run behind money, but I would say that if you have your goal as being the richest person, then why not pursue it, right? That's one thing. And there are different ways to do that as well, and not just consulting. So that's why I want you to reevaluate if you have formed this frame of mind. I think the second question is it better to get into consulting right after BTech or after 1.5 years? Again, Raghu, I mentioned that if you get right after BTech, you will be handling a lot of back end work, right? And after that, you'll get an opportunity to work at the front end with the partners and probably with the clients as well, with a lot of face time, right? So I guess both work extremely well. What I have seen is a lot of people have pursued the first approach as well, and they've done really good. But a lot of people who have grown faster at a partner level have directly gone into an MBA and then from there into an MBB role, right? But again, the proportion of these people who have expedited their growth to a partner level right after BTech, MBA, and then MBB is fairly less. So again, both the approaches are fine. It's more about what you do after you get into your MBA or into consulting.
So, Prathmesh, I know you are a bit short of time. So, do you want, we have one more question. Do you want to take
Sure,
it?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's take it. Yeah.
So, Anubhav is asking, what is your opinion on actuarial sciences? I am a first year statistics honors student and I'm not genuinely interested towards actuaries, but I sometimes do think of it.
Yeah, to be honest, I have no opinion on actuarials, so I won't be able to answer this. I just don't want to say anything blatantly. So couldn't answer this question to the best of my knowledge.
Got it. So, I think we have one more question up. So, the last one, do you want to take it up?
Sure, sure. Please go ahead.
So, in my experience, the strategy of business consulting in Big Four varies from that in startups. What do you think is more rewarding in short term and long term both?
In my experience, the strategy business. Big Four varies from that in startups. What do you think? It's more rewarding in short term. When you say rewarding, Pranita, what do you mean? Is it financially rewarding or is it intellectually rewarding? Again, let me get to I would say, from a status quo perspective, most people would say it has to be financial rewarding, right? Mm, these days, startups are paying a lot more money than your MNCs, and that's why people are opting for it. So, if money is just that North Star for you, this is something which you should look at. But again, the comfort, the work life balance that MNCs provide, the benefits that MNCs provide, far outgrow what most startups provide, right? So again, it's a totally a personal choice whether you want to pursue a career into MNCs or in startups. And I have actually seen people who have started with startups and then ended up at MNCs and vice versa. So at any point in your career trajectory, you can always switch gears.
Got it. So we have some more questions coming up.
Sure. I think we
Yeah.
can take 3-4 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So Vicky is asking, is CFA better pursuing before or after an MBA?
Mm. Vicky, to be honest, I think CFA will give you branding when you sit for a finance roles interview. So it's from a branding standpoint, it's good whenever you do. Just make sure that you're doing it before you apply for a role. And if you have a CFA plus MBA, it obviously enhances your chances.
Got it. So Shivam is asking, I want to pursue MBA in finance and I'm already working in finance domain. So should I get one more year of work ex or do MBA right away? I already have 1 year of experience.
Shivam, again, a personal choice. What I would suggest is give it a good shot at your CAT. See if you land up in a good school. If you do land up in your P0 or priority zero schools, go for it definitely, because I have seen people who cracked IIM Ahmedabad in their first go, and then they dropped or rather, not even deferred. They actually dropped their admission because they wanted to pursue 2 years more in their professional career, and then landed up at IMK. So it's all about the opportunities at hand. If you see a good opportunity right now in front of you, take it. Take the leap of faith.
Right. Sayan is asking, hey, I am a media grad from tier 3 college and with 2 years experience, excluding 1 year gap. Do you think I'll have a fair chance in Big Four consulting career?
Mm, यार सयन, you'll always have a chance with Big Four. Big Four हमेशा hire करता रहता है all around the year. So it's all about finding the right connect. And if you have good connects, ask them to refer you. And if you're a right fit, you'll definitely crack it.
Okay. So, guys, on that note, I'm going to end this session. I hope it was very helpful for you guys. And thank you so much, Prathmesh, for joining us for today's session.
Thanks, Nandini, for having me and bearing with all the things before the interview. It's from our standpoint. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.